Okay, so I want to actually get into the data quality report itself. So for those of you who are familiar with it, the first page in is an actual scoring table. I'm just going to use my marker again to point out a few things. And in the scoring table, what we're doing is that this column here is representing the sections that we are reviewing in the data quality report itself. And then the columns here, it may be a little bit harder for you to see, but we're going to actually bring them up closer in the next slide, is we have a category value. And basically what that means is that we've gone through each section and we've rated the value of what that section is, meaning how overall in terms of if you were to focus on cleaning up a section, what would be the weight of that? So if you clean that up, overall, how's it going to impact your data quality? So with 100 category value being the highest and then 30 being the lowest. The next column here is the rating that the reviewer has either provided to you or that our automated system has provided based on how we've generated it in the background. And then the last section here is the score or the number of points that you get based on that rating. Now along the bottom here, the score is what your overall score is. So we set a threshold at a minimum of 65% and hoping that most agencies are going to at least achieve a score of 65%. And if it falls below 65%, as you can see in this one here, the percentage turns to a red if you printed it out in color, or you'll see it's red on the screen. So we're hoping that, again, it's a flag, a visual flag for organizations to see, okay, you know, not even achieving the minimum threshold, let's see where I can focus in terms of fixing my data for this coming fiscal year. Let's take a little bit of a closer look at this. So I wanted to explain a little bit more about the category value. So what we've done, and we've had this information in the report actually itself, is that we assign, if we look at this inactive program registrations, which actually we're going to follow through now in the rest of this presentation to show you how to clean that section up and then what a new data quality review is actually going to look like by doing that, is that a 2 would be given 30% of the overall marks that's been assigned for that section. So this section has been assigned 100 marks. The agency has received a 2. They're going to get 30% off that 100 marks. And for that, that translates back to the 30 that they're assigned on their review for that year for that section. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more of an explanation. Okay, so again, zeroing in on this DQ, or this Programs in Active section, what is happening is then we take each of those sections and we sort of highlight the data as the report goes through. So in this particular section, we're looking at, first column is the service category, and then you get your program ID, the names of the programs, and then really where the meat and potatoes is in this section here. So we are looking at how many files are exceeding the program flags for those actual programs, and hence potentially are inactive. So then you get an overall total here of 58. So that's how you would read that section. Again, we're going to sort of take this now, and we're going to go a little bit further. And actually now go into another live demo where we're going to be starting to focus on, there's a number of data quality reports. We've chosen for this presentation to just focus on 3 in the hopes that you're going to start to get a sense of how you use the reports and you start to clean up your data and then ultimately see your ratings change.
Great, thanks Deborah. So hopefully you're looking at the same thing I am. I'm back into the reports module again, and I'm actually going to switch folders to the data quality analysis tools. If you recall what Deborah was just showing you on screen, we were looking at the inactive programs. That was a highlight from the larger data quality review that comes out annually. But what we've done here is create corresponding data quality analysis tools for each of those sections. Well, actually not each of them. No, there's not a report for each section on that review, but several of them do have a report that you can run to actually see in real time where your agency is at with each of those different metrics that you're going to see on the larger report. So using the example of the inactive program registration, that's the DQ03, and we're going to run that now. I'll just point out that when I open the data quality analysis tools, they're a little bit different than the rest of the Catalyst reports. They're run on a different platform again. We're still in the Business Objects platform, but they just look a little bit different, and the prompts that come up when we get to that in the next report that I run, I'll explain it a little bit further. But it's just something to be aware of, that they do look a little bit different. So this particular report, it's an as-of report. So that means we're looking at inactive programs as of today, March 11th at 2:15. So you don't actually have to put a time frame in. We're going to see anything that's inactive this minute. It's laid out by provincial service category, and it includes the program ID as well as the program name, program type, whether that program is set to use the AutoCalc in the activity log, and then you've got your 2 program flags here. This particular report is only concerned with program flag 2, so meaning anything that's been inactive longer than program flag 2. For those that aren't familiar with what I'm talking about, the program flags are something you set up or you give to us when you set up a program, and you say, what are your particular flags that would tell you when you think this program is becoming inactive. So you tell us, this substance abuse case management program, we want to know after 60 days and then after 90 days if somebody's inactive. So those are the program flags, and that's where that information comes from. And then this number here is telling us how many of the people in the substance abuse case management program currently open have been open longer than the 90 days. In this case, that's your program flag 2. And actually what percentage that are total open are inactive. So in this case, you can see it's 100% of these are sitting inactive. That's high for a particular program. Now we do take into account that some particular programs may not have a high turnover. You know, we've got residential support housing or residential support treatment services. Some of those have a longer turnover, so we don't look at them the same way we would, for example, a community treatment program. But if we were looking at this particular community treatment program, you can see that almost 90% of the currently open, clients open in that particular program have been sitting inactive. So that's high. You want to actually do something about that. And in order to be able to do something about that, you'd want to look at the details. Before I get into the details, I'll just point out that there are different tabs down here. This one actually gives you the report by site. I can click on that and see the information that I was just looking at, but by site. So in this case, we're looking at site 1. And if I wanted to see site 2, I'd have to page down. So again, this is a little bit different than what you might be used to in the other reports. This is how you page down in these particular reports. You use these down arrows. You can page across or page up. The other piece here are the details. And I'll just click on that and show you the details tab. And I'm going to just turn it back over to Deborah before we go any further right now.
So just to keep things moving along and interactive and make sure that we're, again, focused here, we've got another question coming up here. So one of the things in these reports is that there are input controls, and they are just off to the left, and Laura's actually going to demonstrate it, but we're curious whether people even know what we're talking about when we say input controls and whether you even know that they are available. So again, interesting for us, nobody has said yes. And yeah, so
yeah, wow,
that's,
okay, great.
Yeah,
well,
that's
makes
completely
it exciting.
yeah. Oh, great. We've got one participant that says that they do. Okay, so I'm going to pull this back, and Laura's actually going to show you this, and just to also, there'll be a resource again that'll come out afterwards that is going to have the details of how to use the input control. So even though you see it on the screen and this session is recorded, you will also get a link to that, because just in case you can't see this really close up.
Great,
Okay,
thanks,
Laura.
Deborah. Great. So you may actually know what input controls are, just not familiar with it by that term, but I'm going to go through it because it's an important piece of using the data quality analysis tools, these reports that we're in right now. So if you can see where my mouse is hovering right now over the third box down here on the left, those are your input controls. If I click on that, it will expand, and essentially they will help us to filter what we're seeing on the screen here. So again, I'm in the Details tab, and the details actually give us the client name, the chart file number, their admission date, who the admission caseworker is, the site number, and their program name, and all of the information I need essentially to clean up my data, because that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to go from having a 2 rating on our inactive programs to having a 4 or 5. So what we need to do is actually either terminate somebody if they are no longer active in that program, or we need to add activity so that that program is no longer sitting inactive, so that they're removed from that particular report, or this particular report, sorry. And the best way to be able to do that is to start to filter down the data. So that's the input controls. That's where these come in. So you'll see here under Program Caseworker, note that there are different input controls for different reports, but this particular one has an input control for Program Caseworker and for the site. So I could filter it down by caseworker, which may be really valuable in this particular case, because maybe you want to go to each of your caseworkers and say, here are your inactive programs, or your inactive clients sitting in these inactive programs. You need to deal with them. Or if it's a value for your agency, you can certainly filter by program site in this particular case. So those are your input controls for this particular report. Again, for other reports, there will be other ways to filter your data, but that's an important way to manipulate these reports, and I just want to make sure everybody's clear that that's available to use. So in this particular case, we've filtered just for, I'm actually going to return all values for this particular control, and just looking at Elizabeth Stone. So she's the caseworker that we're looking at here. You'll notice her name is populated here in all of the last column. Don't be confused by admission caseworker. That's a different piece of information. This is the program caseworker that we're looking at. If we were to look at this, or say I'm Elizabeth and somebody's handed me this report and said, clean these up. Here's what I need to do. I'm going to use an example here, Joe Fellows. He's chart file number 6. I can see that he's been open here since May 2009. No, he's done. He's completed his program. Somehow he got missed. I didn't terminate him. I need to go back into Catalyst. So keeping in mind we're in a different application, I need to return to Catalyst, pull up his information, and terminate him. I believe he was chart file number 6. I'm going to walk through getting into his programs. So it was this particular program here, the Substance Abuse Assessment Program, and I'm going to scroll down and enter the end date information. Let's say it was May 5th, 2014. I'll need to enter my reason for termination. He completed, and I'm going to save. So if I actually go back to my report, this is a real-time, or it's refreshed in real time. The activity log piece will not be refreshed in real time, and I'll explain that again in a second. But this particular piece, if I refresh, that's this button here, this report, I now see that our client is gone. Client ID 6, that was Joe Fellows. He has been removed from this report, so yay, I'm on my way to improving my data quality already. So I'd continue on going through each of these and deciding what I needed to do with them. If it was a case of somebody not having activity, then we'll need to get into that, and I'll get back to that in just a second. Deborah, is there something else we need to show, or is that ready to go ahead with that?
I just want to tell you that backstage we're getting responses that this is great. Lots of people didn't even know they existed, even though they've been using this report.
Awesome.
So yeah, so it's great feedback. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, good. Well, I'll keep going then. I'm going to now show an example. Let's say Huck Finn is actually still active in this particular program, the Substance Abuse Assessment Program, but for some reason he's showing up on here, which means I haven't kept his activity log up to date. So again, I need to return back to Catalyst, and I'm going to do a search for my guy, Huck Finn. I think he was chart file number 10. He is, and I pull up his file, and I can actually go into his programs I'm going to pull up the one I want. It's just Substance Abuse Assessment Program, the open one. And then I'm going to add an appointment to his activity log.
So I'm just going to note, Laura, here while you're doing that, that this part may be a bit quick, especially if you haven't done this before, but we have a different tutorial on sort of the flow of Catalyst and that. But the point is what we're trying to show here is that this is the way that you use the reports. You actually use Catalyst to fix the errors, and then you circle back and you double check that. You'll start to see the changes on the actual reports itself. And then in the end result will be that your overall data quality is going to be enhanced.
Great. Thanks, Deb. So just to point out, I mentioned that the activity log data is not collected in real time. So what that means is they don't, behind the scenes, it's not spooled, it's not updated until overnight. So even though our client now has activity, I've refreshed my report, HuckFin's still showing on here. Tomorrow, however, tomorrow morning if I were to run this, he will be gone. So we are in a sense cleaning up the data, it's just it won't be refreshed until tomorrow if that's the route you took for a particular client. So that's the inactive programs piece. So we're going to actually explain another one of the metrics, and that's the program registrations and terminations. We didn't show that on screen yet, but we're going to move into another sort of heavy hitter, if you will. It's the DQ06. I'm going to open this particular report. Now this is a little bit different in that it's not going to be a real-time type of cleanup. It's more of a way of looking at your data and monitoring what's going on at the agency level. It's not like the inactive programs where you can pick a client and actually have them removed from the report. It's a little more subjective. While I'm running this, I'll show you, here's an example of prompts. It's like parameters in the other reports. And in this case, I want to look at this year, so this year being this fiscal, and there is a dictionary of what all of these prompts are and what period of analysis they mean in a KB article. So that will be included in our resources at the end of this training. Once I've set that, you can see it's set by over here. I click OK. I'm going to run this report. Now we've set these up to, some of them have an actual color coding. We're able to automatically rate this section behind the scenes. If we were to look at this data right now, what kind of rating are you going to get? Well, in this case, we can see red. Red's not good. We want green. So you want to jump right to those sections pretty quickly and say, okay, what's going on here? Looking again at this particular report, let me just close these input controls. It takes up space here. This report isn't going to be, like I said, with the inactive programs. It's not going to give me specific information to go and fix. But what I could do is take a look at, I'm looking at community treatment here, for example. Why are there such a high number of carried overs with my community treatment program? Maybe I need to talk to the counselors that are running that program and see if they're using Catalyst correctly or what's going on. It's more of a flag to help you maybe look at other reports that might give you the information you need. Again, this particular report has a detail by provincial service category. So you could look at the clients that are sitting open in these programs, and it would be a way to be able to look at the data. There are input controls here if I wanted to filter it down. So this one has provincial service category, program name. So there's lots of ways to be able to filter the data you're seeing on this detail because it could be overwhelming, especially an agency that has a lot of clients and a lot of programs. So maybe I just want to have it filtered by my community treatment program and by a particular program caseworker. So maybe I'm going to go see Elizabeth and say, hey, you see a lot more clients in your community treatment program. Is this reflective of what's going on here? So again, it's a way to be able to manage information at the agency level, but there's not that immediate feedback or payoff of terminating or fixing and cleaning up.
I think it's a good
Okay.
example, Laura, also just to say that when we were talking earlier about engaging staff, it could be a really good way to engage staff if you filter
Mm-hmm.
down for management like supervision reasons, that you can filter down by staff person, by program, and then you can bring that in and talk with staff and say, does this seem correct for you? Because it's the staff that's going to know whether that's a true representation, and then you can start to take it a little bit further and have discussions with them and then go see what may be going on with the data. So I'm just going to, again, just to see where people are sitting at. Oops, I pulled the wrong poll out. So going to do another quick poll to see whether people are actually using this report. So this is the DQ06 registrations and terminations, and to see whether people not to find it useful, but how many people are actually using it. So again, very interesting. We've got majority are either sitting at never have used or just at the end of the quarter or the end of the fiscal. So that's good. We've got about 10 there, but we're getting close to 65% who are not using this one. So again, hoping you've seen some value, in particular with the input controls. Laura, there was a question backstage. I think I'm going to ask it because I think it could be relevant. You probably know the answer to it. I think it was Lorraine was asking whether you can print reports directly without exporting them. She's finding when she exports them that the page breaks are weird. I don't know if you've got a comment on that, and if not, then
Yeah, I don't. I believe you can, but I don't want to comment right now. I'm going to test it, and we'll send it out with the FAQs.
Okay, great. Thanks,
Thanks.
Laura.
Okay, great. So let's, sorry, go ahead, Deb.
No, I was going to say I'm going to go back to you so you can do the DQ08.
Perfect. Okay, so we're back at the data quality, sorry, let me just go back here. We're back at the data quality analysis tools folder, and we're now going to look at the DQ08. This is our third example from the data quality, the larger data quality report. This is a third example of one of the individual reports that you can run in real time to see what's going on at the agency level, and this one is for the unknown postal codes. So double click on that. And again, I'm prompted for a period of analysis, and again, we use this year, and I click OK. And I can see in real time what's going on at my agency. Am I going to get a poor rating for this particular metric? Yes. If things are left as is right now, you would get, in this case, a 1 rating. If I want to bring it up to a 5, I need to have this number brought down to a 0% of unknowns. So the details tab in this particular report is of great value because that's where you can actually see who's sitting here with the unknown in the postal code field. So again, we'll use the example to clean up. We'll use this one here, Dagwood Bumpsteed. He's chart file number 104. I'm going to return to Catalyst and pull up my chart. Whoops, I'm going to exit the activity log here. I'm going to look for chart file 104. And I pull up his chart file, and I'm brought to his client information, and this is where you would change his postal code. So yes, he has these, or it's been used unknown here, but I'm going to put the real postal code for him in, and I'm going to save it. If I did nothing else, my report will still list this client as having unknown postal code. The reason being that this postal code needs to be associated to the admission that's currently open. And you do that by going into address effective date and finding the one that you want to associate with the current admission. In this case, we'll select the last one. And I need to select apply corrections to postal code, city, and county at the time the client was admitted to this particular open admission. Once I do that, corrections to postal code, city, and county have been applied to the selected admission. So now, if I were to return to my report, again, this will be refreshed in real time. I get immediate gratification, and Dagwood's been removed from the unknown postal codes. So I would continue with this process with the rest of my unknowns and hopefully getting my summary back down to a reasonable number that will give me a good rating. So that's what we're going to show for the data quality metrics. But again, there are several. I'll just return to that list. I really encourage you, especially this time of year, the fiscal year end coming up, to familiarize yourself with those. The resources we'll send out will have more information about how to use those, but a great place for getting control of your data quality.
What we just want to do is to go back now to sort of circle back. Let's assume that your organization has decided to put resources, because I mean we completely acknowledge that most organizations wouldn't have the resources sometimes, especially if there's a significant problem area, to put towards a huge cleanup in every single area. But as we were following that example through on the inactive programs, and Laura did the cleanup with the DQ03, and as you can see here, it's now the next fiscal year, report comes back, and you've gone from a 2 to a 4. And that, in the end, down here with the score, has now taken you over the threshold of 65% up to 71%. Now, it may feel like, well, that was an awful lot of work that I've done, and how come I haven't gone up higher than that? But again, if you look back, let's take the example of inactive admissions here. It's still sitting at a 1, and that has a category value of 60. So it may be, you know, at a management level, it's decided, okay, let's look, see what's going on here, what are the issues, and what can we address, and see if we can address that next year. Again, the intent of this webinar was to say, how do we take the reports that are available to us, how do we use them, how do we go fix data, how do we go back, look at the report, see if the changes are made, and then overall, a year later, see what may change in the overall data quality report. But as Laura has pointed out, you can pretty well, for every single one of these sections, can get a reading as you go along throughout the year. You don't have to wait for the annual report to come out.